morning, everybody. My name is Sean O'Leary. I'm Planning Manager with the Irish Planning Institute. I'd just like to welcome you all here this morning, and also the people who are watching online, which is very exciting altogether. Just also like to thank Alan and Suzanne and everybody else for inviting the Institute, giving the Institute the opportunity to be an event partner this morning. It's certainly very interesting. I'll run through this morning's schedule. Our keynote speaker, as you know, is Michael Earley. I'll briefly just give a run through of the Planning Institute's interest in BIM and the value that we think it adds. Following the presentation, there will be a Q&A, and then we'll break into your roundtables and we'll have a discussion. And then we'll have some feedback from that and see what you've discussed. We have 3 questions which I think will provoke some debate or discussion even at this hour of the morning. And then we'll hear the progress of the BIM pilot and we'll wrap up then and you know we will have you out of here for we'll have the formal bit over for 10 o'clock. I suppose just very briefly on the Planning Institute. The Planning Institute was founded in 1975. It's an all-island organisation. It's a professional body representing planners in spatial and physical planning. In Ireland we have about 600 members, and we also accredit the planning schools in UCD, DIT and UCC. We also have a branch structure through which we conduct CPD and research, and coming up we have a 2-day conference in Belfast, which is sort of the flagship event. That's in April. That's looking at renewable energy. It's looking at government reform in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and it's also looking at regeneration. We're also a partner in the forthcoming Intelligent Energy Europe project on renewable energy, and particularly the potential of BIM in that space is something that I'm going to bear in mind as that is rolled out over the next 3 years. We're also a member of the European Council of Spatial Planners and a member of the Urban Forum, along with the other built environment institutes. I suppose I'm quite conscious of the importance of improving the familiarity of planners with BIM and the sort of data that they might be presented with into the future and the potential that holds. I'm also quite interested and excited by its potential as a collaborative tool. I also think that there's a particular scale of planners is the project management thing, and I think if we're able to match the technical know-how and expertise with that project management role, I think there's opportunities there for our own profession. Particularly I was involved in a very tangential way in setting up a VIA Fulcrum in Cork, and I know they're an organisation of built environment professionals who are very excited by the potential of this, and I think that's very interesting as well. From talking to Michael, who was also involved in the setting up of Energy Cork, which is a consortium, a cluster in Cork, and facilities management is something that kept on emerging as a big issue. So the opportunities, well not related to planning, I think the opportunities there, I'm very well aware of them. I suppose just the other thing that I would say is that for many years the Institute would have had a view on strategic projects and major infrastructure projects and development projects. And it's how we prepare people for that, and how the planning process can facilitate that, so people aren't put off, I suppose, when they see the size and the scale and the bulk maybe and the location of major projects. And that's thinking particularly of the National Children's Hospital, and I know something that Ralph Montague has particular trenchant views on, but it's how BIM can be used to determine the scale of that and how it fits into the site, and the potential for visualization techniques and design exercises to see about things like scale, bulk, height, the visual impact of that, and to start communicating that at a very early stage. And I think that's very useful for planners. It's also very useful for communities as well, and I think that's very important. I also understand that BIM models are sometimes required in some jurisdictions when you're applying for planning consent. BIM can form part of that, and I think that's maybe a discussion that we should continue. So that's a very brief overview of our role and our interest in this area. I will introduce our keynote speaker now, who is Michael Earley. Michael is a technical architect and software developer at Scott Talon Walker Architects. He's involved in both the project management and day-to-day operation of building information modelling for a number of healthcare, education and commercial buildings. At Scott Talon Walker, Michael has worked on projects such as the Aviva Stadium, the East Point Business Park and the Clarion Hotel in Cork, and has developed a particular expertise in developing systems to streamline large and complex projects. As part of the RIAI BIM subcommittee, Michael is also responsible for the development of a standard BIM execution plan, which you might make some reference to. And I also note in his LinkedIn profile that he's a former Irish Conquer champion. So he doesn't like building things, he also likes smashing things, which is good to know as well. So now I'll introduce Michael. You can now speak now.
Right. Thanks very much, Sean. Thanks for mentioning the Conquer Championship. It's many years ago. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Earley. I'm from Scotland Walker Architects. As Sean mentioned, I suppose systems are one of my kind of specialisations, and BIM is very much a systematic way of designing. I'm going to give a presentation today on BIM Execution Plans. Some of you are probably aware, we've put together a draft plan, an execution plan, as part of an RIAI committee. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I suppose, step back a little bit first, just why we did it, what the influences for the execution plan were, why do we need one, and then go through the details of the execution plan itself. Okay, the significant body of relevant standards and legislation for BIM at the moment is currently being generated in the UK. Partly this is to do with the actual fact that BIM is a national policy in the UK. But this is quite big. It's not in Ireland. There's very little, as far as I'm aware at the moment, national policy being built up on BIM in Ireland. There's a little bit of interest growing, but not anywhere as significant as it is in the UK. So we're going to be very much influenced by what is happening in the UK for about the next 2-3 years in BIM. BIM is part of what's called the UK government construction strategy, so it's very much a full-on strategy for them. The UK government wants to be a better client, and the UK government will fully require fully collaborative BIM by 2016, and Ireland basically needs to position itself to be able to compete with this. Fully collaborative BIM is quite a housey aspiration. They have about 3 years to do it, and the idea is that every project that is funded by the UK government will have to have a BIM model up in the cloud, basically as a shared asset among all the design team. It's quite aspirational, but they have to be given a lot of credit for pushing that, although it's going to be very tough on a lot of organisations. Their strategy started off in 2 papers. First one was in March 2011, although there had been a good bit of work done before that. And the first one was a report for the Government Construction Client Group. And that was an industry working group. So that was the members of that were from the actual construction industry, right across the board. And they came up with recommendations. In May 2011, then the Government Construction Strategy was created with the view basically to reduce costs by 20%, reduce the carbon footprint, and to bring in BIM as a key ingredient. And then the BIM task group was set up. So a lot of work was done on this, and in Ireland we're still, as you can see at the moment, we're actually about 2 years behind at least. Okay, this is a diagram that probably a lot of people are seeing now at the moment. A lot of people are asking this question, when do we need BIM? Now, in Ireland, you don't actually need BIM yet. In the UK, since June of last year, so over 6 months, everyone had to be at level 2. Level 2 means that you produce a BIM model, but it doesn't have to be the central shared model. each organisation produced the BIM model, they share it with the other design team, and ultimately there's a federated list of BIM models handed over as a digital representation of the building. 2016, that has to gear up to be cloud-based. So, okay, I'm going to go back to where the sort of standards came from, so I can give you some idea of how we came up with the RIAI template BIM Execution Plan. It's still in a draft format, but the essence of it starts off from the BS 1192 2007. That was a document, British standard. It was set up basically for collaborative production of architectural engineering and construction information, and it's a code of practice. Not necessarily has to be to do with BIM, it's to do with basically how to name files in construction, how to share them, and one of the important aspects of it is the way that it shares it. And this has been used now in sharing models. There's sort of 4 stages. There's the work in progress, there's a shared, there's a publication, and there's an archive. And it gives a very clear definition basically for how fit for purpose a BIM model is. There's 2 documents being worked on at the moment. I only have access to one, which is the PIS 1192. PIS stands for Publicly Accessible Standard. Ultimately, that will become BS 1192, probably this year, I would suspect, and there'll be another one then, which is another version. The first one's to do with basically delivery of projects, and the second one will be to do with sort of operations and maintenance and portfolio and asset management. So very much for the UK government basically to look at maintaining the assets that they have. Also, what came out of BS 1192 was the AEC UK BIM Protocol, version 2. Version 2 was brought out in September, and they also brought out a BIM Execution Plan. It's not so much a BIM Execution Plan, it's kind of a guidance on how to write a BIM Execution Plan. But it's actually very good. We used it then as the actual template then to generate the RIAI template, BIM Execution Plan, and we gave it a little bit of an Irish flavour. When we started off, I suppose I thought, would we produce the BIM protocol itself again? The BIM protocol is it's quite a beefy document. It uses BS 1192 as the basis, but says exactly how you do it, as if you were doing the project in-house, where you put your files, how to name them. It's actually excellent guidance. The execution plan, just to make it clear, the execution plan itself is how the team works together. So it is, I suppose, the lowest common denominator of how the actual project team, when I say the project team, I'm talking about the structural engineers, mechanical engineers, it could be planners, architects, everyone basically who is involved in it. And it sets out basically the lowest common denominator for everyone. And it's a document, certainly a design stage, that would be agreed between everyone, that's the minimum standard that you'd work to. Okay, so BS 1192, just a quick slide on that as to what it is, just in case people aren't familiar with it. It defines the common data environment. That's how you share model files. So how fit models are for purpose, naming of containers, which are basically folders and files, the suitability of models, drawings and documents, covers revision control. It also covers spatial coordination. In our BIM Execution Plan, we've gone a little bit further on the spatial coordination and used the Ordnance Survey Ireland coordinate system, which is the ITM coordinate system, and gave a little bit more detail on that to make it more local to ourselves. And it covers quality management as well. It's a very good document, and certainly if you're doing a BIM project, it would certainly be there as one of your standards to recommend. PS 1192, which will become BS 1192, Section 2 and 3. Section 2 is to do with the information delivery cycle. As I said earlier, one of the things that the UK government, I know I keep going back to the UK, but they are ahead of us, and we have a bit of catching up to do. But Part 2 is to do with information delivery cycle, and basically what the UK government want to get is this 20% reduction, not just through the use of BIM, but through improving the processes as well in the system, and they're radically overhauling everything. So it relates, or they reference BS 1192 very much, the CIC, which is the Construction Industry Council, Scope of Services, and the COBE UK 2012. Those who are not familiar with the COBE relates to basically the facilities management, basically how to manage the data that you use to manage the building after it's completed. That becomes part of the O&M manual, or the Operations and Maintenance manual. The CIC scope of services, there's a couple of scopes of services out there. This is one they are referencing, and it has sort of 7 stages. It's similar to the RIBA and the RIAI scope of services, where you'd have work stages, but they have their own work stages. And it'll be interesting, I suppose, to see which one wins out there. The RIBA did release a version, which is called the BIM Overlay Plan for the RIBA scope of works recently. Probably it'll be in competition with that document. Okay, the standardised information, PS 1192 is trying to do two major things, I suppose. One is standardised information, and the other one is to set down standard roles for the industry. One of the standard documents it's going to have is an employer's information requirements. This will be specific to BIM. But it will state, and this is a problem we have at the moment actually, when we go for projects, our clients don't always exactly know what they want. They're looking to us for the expertise, where the UK government really want to be far more explicit in what they require. So what they're doing is they're basically putting together standardised forms for employers' information requirements, and they're trying to get all their potential UK clients sort of trained up on this. So what we'll be getting in the future, in the UK anyway, for UK projects, is a set of explicit requirements for BIM. That'll be given out with every project that has any public funding. After you receive that, when you're tendering for the project, you will have to produce, or we'll have to produce as suppliers, and that's everyone who supplies information to them, a supply chain information execution plan, and SCEIP it's short. There's 2 versions, one is partial and one's full. The partial version will be submitted when you're tendering for the project, and if you get the project, you'll submit the full version. What we're suggesting is that the RIAI execution plan will actually be suitable for basically the full version. It'll have all the information that's required in there for a full version of the supply chain information execution plan, or it can be tailored to suit it. The other document they will be looking for is a project implementation plan, or a PIP. And it's made up of 3 parts. It's a BIM assessment form, an IT assessment form, and a resource assessment form. All IT related, but basically what they'll want to know is, can you perform? What project have you used BIM on? What are your resources? Who will be working on BIM, and so on. And then there are 2 other documents, a master information delivery plan, which is basically going to be a high-level document to manage the project, and then you've got the master information delivery index. It's like the last one's like a list of deliverables with dates set against the deliverables for each organisation. The employer's information requirements, I'll just quickly go down through these. There's a good bit of information in it, but the PowerPoint will be available afterwards anyway. It'll define things like, let's say, a schedule of standards and guidance documents to be used in the BIM project, schedule of software formats. So what they're trying to do is trying to say, look, rather than every company coming along and saying what they could offer, the employer will basically say what they want. And you can see part of it will be the spatial coordinate system as well will be defined. Okay, so that's in the process at the moment. It's only defined at the moment in a PAS 1192 document. The partial SCIP, as I said, that'll be part of the tender. So each supplier, whether it's someone supplying architectural or engineering or it could be supplying counters or whatever to the project, will need to produce an SCIP, a partial one initially as part of the tender. And there's certain specific information on that. Basically, it's got to include all the requirements, basically, of the EIR, the Employer Information document, and also some other information in addition to that. Post-contract, then, you'll have to produce the final SCIP. And the final SCIP, as I said, it's looking for a lot of information, but if we can standardise our response to that in this document, an execution plan, that will, where the work, or the majority of the work will be done, it'll be a huge resource, I think, to everyone. So there's a whole list of information. I won't go through it at the moment, but you can see things like drawing sheet templates, layer naming conventions if they're going to be used, what file naming you're going to use on the project, how is information going to be approved. It's going to be quite detailed. Exchange formats, project collaboration, EDMS, where you're going to store the documents, and then you'll also have the master information delivery plan as well, and any agreed construction tolerances for all disciplines. So they're going to be looking for a lot of information. Okay, just a quick overview on the roles, because what they're doing is they're standardising roles and also and documents. The employer's representative is probably a reasonably familiar sort of role at the moment. That is the person, it could be the actual client, or it could be someone that the client actually assigns as an expert for the client to make sure that the work is done in accordance with their requirements. There'll be a technical advisor to them, they've identified that. On the supplier side, there's two main roles. One is a project delivery manager, and the other one is project information manager. Just go down quickly just through what they are. Employee's representative basically is the person delegated on behalf of the employer. Not too different to what we would understand at the moment as being an employer's representative. The one thing, the major role they will have is the definition of the employer information requirements. So they will produce that document that will be sent around to each supplier of BIM information. On the supplier side, the main person will be the project delivery manager. Now, these are roles. These could all be in a very small project done by one person on the supplier side, or they could be done in very large projects by individual people. But they want to know who is the project delivery manager. So their role anyway, basically, is the project delivery manager's role is to deliver the project in a timely manner, and they're responsible for the master information delivery plan. That's the overall plan for the whole project, tying in every discipline's work. There's a project information manager. This is akin, I suppose, to what I will show you now shortly as being the BIM Coordinator. This is the person who's the expert on BIM, and they are basically, their focal point is information modelling issues. So they're looking for this concept of a person who will manage the BIM model. There's a few other roles then. There's lead designers, task team managers, and so on. You can look through the PS document and you'll see their roles and responsibilities. Again, on a very large project, these could all be individuals. They could also be the same person as well. The lead designer is the actual, the person who is responsible for design. I suppose one thing not to get confused about is the lead designer is responsible for coordinated delivery of all design information, where the actual the BIM coordinator or the project information manager is dealing with BIM alone and basically making sure that information gets delivered on time and in the right format. And then there's all these other team roles. You can have a look at that on the slide. The Master Information Delivery Plan, this is kind of an overall document. Now this includes BIM, includes information about the milestones for the project, it includes everything. It's basically like a master plan for the project. This will need to be maintained by someone on the supply side or on the design team or construction team. The project information model is what they refer to the actual BIM model, or a PIM document. Possibly some of these are subject to change as well, so don't get, I suppose, too hung up on the terms because the document is a draft. They call the BIM model the project information model. and it just notes that it should be progressively developed and delivered to the employer. So they're clearly looking for the BIM model through a series of information exchanges. So it'll be developed in accordance with the Master Information Delivery Plan, and it'll consist of graphical data and non-graphical data documents. So, just come back to this again because what I want to focus on next is just the AEC UK BIM Protocol, which is derived from BS 1192. I've looked at the PIS standard, and the PIS standard probably this year will come out as BIM's or BS standards. The reason we chose the AEC UK BIM Protocol is because it's ultimately a very simple and straightforward document. There are a number of protocols out there in BIM Execution Plans. There's one from Hong Kong, there's the Pennsylvania State University, there's any number of them now at the moment. So it's the great thing about standards, there's so many to choose from. But the AEC UK one is particularly well written. And what we looked at then was, we thought, look, it's so good that we can actually use it nearly as it is at the moment and extend it out to make our own template BIM execution plan. The one thing I was concerned about was there's a lot of good guidance, but when you sit down to a meeting and you're managing a BIM project, you need something that you can say, look, here's how we're going to do the project, not just this is good guidance and you should do it this way. You need something to say, this is exactly how we'll do it, and how I think we'll do it, and can we all agree that we'll do it that way? And be very explicit about the things that you're sharing. And often you don't really want to know behind the scenes how they store it on the server, if they back it up. You just want to know that you can rely on the data to come in good time. But all you need to know is what's the name of the file, where are we going to store it, who's going to be responsible for sending it out, how is it validated, what quality can I expect out of the model, what quality is expected when I hand over the model to someone else. So very sort of practical things. Okay, so just a quick note on the AEC UK BIM protocols. There's two main ones at the moment, the AEC UK BIM Protocol and the AEC UK BIM Protocol Project BIM Execution Plan. The BIM Protocol is a very meaty document, very good document. The execution plan is really guidance on how to write an execution plan, and that is what we based our execution plan on, that guidance. They also have sub-documents as well. They have a version of the BIM Protocol for Autodesk Revit, for Bentley. They're going to do one for ArchiCAD and also one for Vectorworks in version 2. There is a version 1 for all those 4 systems, but they're still working on 2 for ArchiCAD and for Vectorworks. So you're getting this flavour for each platform, and it's a very good format in the sense that in the middle is the kind of the main standards, irrespective of platform, and then you get the very specifics for each platform after that. So moving on to the BIM Execution Plan, which is derived from the BIM Execution Plan, the AEC UK version. It was set up basically through a group which I'm involved in, which is the RIAI BIM Committee, and we have 6 sort of main sections, and the section that deals with the execution plan is the good practice section. And there's a little bit of interrelation between them and also between other committees in the RIAI. So why an execution plan? BIM is collaborative, therefore there needs to be a plan to ensure successful engagement with BIM. We need to plan. I mean, it's in the old days, I suppose, we kind of did things because we all knew that was kind of the way you did it, and often didn't always work out as well as it should. And in hindsight, you said, look, if we planned that, it would have worked out better. But in BIM, it is complex. There's no doubt about that. But planned well, it will deliver time and cost savings. The plan must include all BIM stakeholders. That's very important. And even though the document at the moment is the RIAI BIM Execution Plan, we knew we had to get off the blocks, and no one else was kind of coming to the table on it. And we thought, look, the architects probably just need to get this out. We need to get something together, and so that it'll drive discussion, if nothing else at least. So the software and processes of all BIM stakeholders must work together. So it's not just software, it is the process. It's very important that we're all working together, doing the same thing and reducing sort of redundancy of effort. So the BIM capability then of each stakeholder is often different. That's going to be the case for another 2 or 3 years anyway. Every time you get a team together, there's always going to be one who's hardly used BIM at all, someone who's done 38 projects in BIM, and everyone else is somewhere in between. So the plan to unify the capabilities of all parties. So this is the scope of the document. It follows the same format as the CUK document, or their guidance. So just one thing to note, the BIM Execution Plan is managed by the BIM Coordinator. This is an important role, and this is a role that goes across all disciplines. So it's divided into 5 main sections. First is introduction, project information, objectives and goals, collaborative working, which is kind of the meat of the document really, and then the project resources and IT, and then there's a number of appendices which are very important. The introduction, there's a few sections. It's fairly straightforward stuff. Organisation agreement is the last section, which is very important. Everyone's got to agree to the document, that they'll work to the standards in that document. Section 2 then sets out things like the project details, the scope and so on. Unique project challenges. What's different about this project? It has who is the BIM coordinator, the key objectives of the stakeholders, and then it defines exactly what the BIM coordinator does and the BIM manager does in very explicit detail, what their role is. Not just that there is one, but exactly what they do. The BIM coordinator is one per project, responsible for the BIM, this is summary obviously, responsible for the BIM Execution Plan. They will basically take, hopefully, the execution plan, the AI one for the moment, take it as a template and tailor it for the project. They'll be responsible for BIM coordination program, so they're responsible for making sure that the BIM sort of milestones match the actual project milestones. That basically you get the information delivered in time to meet the deadlines, such as planning and statutory applications and so on. They'll coordinate the BIM workshops. They're responsible for the common data environment. That's the basically central resource where everyone uploads their data to, and the actual quality of that information. They're responsible for the quality control of BIM, including defining the level of detail, which is very important, managing clash detection overall, model ownership, etc. And they're responsible for model handover. So if a model has to be handed over to a client at a particular stage, they are responsible for ensuring that everyone meets that deadline, that the quality of that document is up to scratch, that the level of detail in those models is correct. The BIM manager, there's one per BIM stakeholder. So every company involved in BIM should have a BIM manager. They're the interface with the BIM coordinator. I'd say just one thing, everyone asks, where does a BIM coordinator come from? It could be anyone on the team, anyone who's very BIM, has an expertise in BIM. We often offer it as being the architects and sort of lead designers to say, we'll do it. We're in a good position in a way because we're starting the project early. We're in the first companies to be involved in BIM, but it doesn't always necessarily have to be that way. So the other things the BIM manager does is ensure the project is adequately resourced. They attend the BIM coordination workshops. BIM coordination workshops, depending on the project, this could be the design team meetings, it could be a separate sort of split out meeting that happens. I've seen it done in a few ways. It could be a split out meeting where you actually sort out all the BIM issues and then you go into the design team meeting and you bring in all the issues into that, or it could be very much the same thing. So they'll validate the model prior to being issued, they'll generate clash detections, they'll have to deal with the clashes identified for themselves, and they'll be the ones publishing the model. Section 3 then goes through the project objectives and goals. I'm just conscious of time. The level of development matrix is an important document. It's an appendix in the actual document, and what it does is it sets out the level of detail basically in the model, because what you want to do is make sure that you don't have door handles on the drawings when you're doing the sort of outline schematic sort of drawings for the building, or the 3Ds for the building. So there's got to be sort of an agreed level of detail, and we've done our best to try and resolve that as much as possible through 5 levels. 3 of them are to do with design, and 2 are to do with, one is to do with construction, and one is to do with the handover of the model, or the one that will become the facilities management model at the end of the day. The process we've set down for this is that you first establish that BIM will be utilised for particular use. So if it's not, you don't really need to answer the rest of the questions. If BIM will be used, you select a level of development, or level appropriate for that use. So if you're actually doing something that's later on in the project, it'll have a higher level of development. Something earlier on will have a lower level of development. Identify the organisations responsible for leading and coordinating each use. So the way we see it is, someone leads, someone coordinates, and someone potentially reviews. There's always one lead. That has to be the case. So then you identify the organisations that coordinate the model, and then you finally identify all those who review and comment on the outputs from the model. So the levels of the detail is 5 of them. The first one is conceptual design. The second one is similar to schematic design. The third one is the model elements are suitable for generation of construction documents and shop drawings. 400 then is a contractor level stage. This level of development is considered suitable for fabrication and assembly. And the last one is as constructed, and this is suitable for maintenance and operations of the facility. So it's 5 very, very discrete levels of development. Okay, just a note on spatial coordination. In the document, the execution plan, we've used the Ordnance Survey Ireland ITM coordinates, set out the items like survey point, base point, units of measurement, grids true north. So very much define what everyone will need to get the project done from a spatial coordination point of view. It defines modelling standards, so line weights, patterns, styles, and so on. This is to ensure that basically when everyone brings the models together and you output the actual information, that it looks the same. It's not like the old days where everyone would do their own drawings. And I'm sure anyone that even has done a bit of CAD with XREFs, and you start to bring together the XREFs from different organisations, you need the layers and the colours of the layers right. Similar sort of setup, you have to get all the presentation qualities right for those. So another section that's in there is communications and meetings. You need to have a strategy for that, and this would be very much the BIM coordinator is responsible for this. They'll set up the common data environment, and they'll set up the meetings as well for BIM. Data exchange protocols. Generally, we're going to follow BS 1192, which defines basically 4 levels. 4, so basically, these are like it's like revision control. The problem we had with CAD was we were so good at actually issuing out our drawings, and having proper revisions on them, and then you just chuck out the AutoCAD drawing and send it to someone, and then I found in projects, especially when we were working in the Middle East, we'd hand them the drawings, the paper drawings, the CD, the CAD model. You'd never see the rest of it again. They'd comment on the CAD model, and that's all they ever used. So you think, oh my God, you really need to get the control on this right, and it's very much important with the BIM model, because when we get to 3 years' time, if you're working in the UK, that will become the data for the project. So you need an agreed format exchange for the model, and you need a model naming convention as well. And BS 1192 sets that out very clearly. So again, in data exchange protocols, you need to have a system for validating the model, doing clash detection, resolving clashes. We've made a good effort to define how that's done, who does it, and what are the steps to do that. Also then how you subdivide the model down, and how you link them back in together again. That's defined in our document. And then there's a section of model ownership and intellectual property rights. That's important because it sort of says basically that everyone who produces a model owns, nearly there, that information, and they have rights to that information. And that's kind of a tricky one, because it's always asked, how do you ensure that your information isn't getting messed up with someone else's, and if there's a claim later on, each organisation has their own model. Okay, just going to quickly go through it. Last section on the main document is resources and IT requirement, and that's really just setting down that everyone agrees to use this software. not to upgrade too often, or tell the BIM coordinator what you're upgrading to, so you don't have incompatibility issues. The appendices then, there's 8 of them at the moment, and they're very much forms. They're kind of, you sit down in the meeting, you fill out those forms, and they'll define exactly how you'll do the project. Just about there. What's next for the BIM Execution Plan? The RIAI BIM Execution Plan is currently, it's at a draft status. It's being distributed to the RIAI, the CEI, CIF and the SCSI and the Irish Planning Institute as well for review and comment, and we're getting some comments back on that. The drafts and comments are being reviewed by the RIAI on the 6th of March. There'll be a few reviews on that, I suspect, and then there'll be a revised draft, or maybe 2 after that. There's a lot of work in it, and we want to get it as right as possible. In conjunction with that, we're working on a BIM overlay plan for the RIAI work stages. This will be similar to a document that the RIBA brought out, and also the CIC scope of services. This will sort of define basically the project program, so what you do at various stages, and we think that'll be quite useful as well. And should I will? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Does anybody have any questions at this stage? No?
Is the execution plan available?
It'll be available next month, we hope. We need to run it by we have to wait for all the comments to come back first and run it by the RIAI, just that it's suitable for publication. But I suspect we'll publish it as a draft first. At the moment, I just want to run it by all the various sort of organisations, professional bodies, and then before we get it out to everyone else. But it will be available shortly.
I presume, Michael, you distributed to Engineers Ireland as well?
Yes.
It wasn't on the...
Oh yeah, sorry, I did, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else? No? Okay, we might move on to the workshop unless you have some questions now. Yeah.